Tonight on Game Night, a different episode. We're not going to play games. We're going to discuss 3 games. Push-A-Monster, Schatz-Rabatz and Spinderella. These are the 3 games nominated for the 2015 Kinderspiel from the Spiel des Jahres. If you're watching this video, it's likely you probably watched us play these 3 games. If you did not, I'm sure there will be handy links below to see each of those episodes. But otherwise, let's get to the discussion. So, here are the 3 games nominated for the Kinderspiel in the Spiel des Jahres. Spinderella, Schatz-Rabatz, Push-A-Monster. Mark, pick one and let's start.
Let's start in the middle.
Okay.
Schatz-Rabatz. I liked it okay, but mostly what I liked about it was imagining playing with like really little kids, right?
Okay.
It felt like, I don't think it's rated the youngest, but it felt like the youngest feeling game to me.
5+, 5+, 6+.
Yeah. And, speed, dexterity, speed recognition. Wasn't my favorite, but I like it okay. And I could see playing with kids, it's zero explanation, just go.
Now, I meant to ask you this when we played it, but I was going to say it surprised me because you have in your collection a lot of what I consider to be pattern recognition, speed, like grab a thing, touch a thing, do a thing games. And yet you didn't like the adult version of this game, which was more of a here's the information.
Right.
So why do you think that is?
Well, it's funny when you said that. I didn't realize I had a handful of those games. And I think I got them when my kids were real little because it takes almost no explanation to say, find a piece that looks like this. This game's a little different than that. It's almost the inverse of that. Find pieces and then figure out what gets knocked out. But just because I have them and they play well with kids doesn't mean I love them.
Okay.
What do you think, Nick?
I enjoyed this one. I liked the just grab and see what fits in the box version of it versus the older version where everyone's fighting for particular pieces. I enjoyed the trying to get it to fit in the box and how much can I get in the treasure chest.
Sure.
I liked that a lot better.
Yeah, I have not played the normal version of the game. I've only played the more advanced one, and it wasn't as cutthroat. It was crazy. You're definitely just, unless you're super fast, you're just sitting there looking at a bunch of pieces that don't fit the bill. Unfortunately, obviously though, there's probably more than you think, just because there's sure an awful lot of pieces there, and there's not many on the card. Mm-hmm. But I like both versions. Watching you guys play the one, when I specifically read the rules for that version, I'm like, oh, I think I like that version better. I like just blindly trying to. It's more of, like Dave said, it's less tactical and more how many can I cram in. What's the best way I can cram these pieces in here?
Right.
And it's because it's all up in the air, right? You don't know what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I definitely like the puzzly aspect of it the most. What can I fit in this chest? As opposed to, like I called it, Galaxy Trucker for kids when we played it, or Factory Fun. I'm not a big fan of those. Recognize what's going to fit and grab it before anybody else does, and and I love confrontational and fast-moving games, but it just really didn't click for me on this one. It didn't really seem to make it any better.
Right. For me, what was the Carrera game with the cars and the cat from last year?
Flits and Meats?
Yeah. To me, the regular version of the game felt like that was this niche again from this jury of this is the game that's really like an activity instead of a game. The regular version of the game for me just wasn't a game. It doesn't mean I didn't have fun, but it became for me just the activity of putting stuff in the chest and then seeing if I got lucky, which, by the way, was fine. The game took 10 or 15 minutes, and it didn't matter that I was never close because I was still having fun, and it was neat to try to fit the pieces in. As I said, I don't have that spatial recognition skill of trying to...
Right.
So, but it didn't matter to me. But I didn't mind Flits and Meats. I had fun playing Flits and Meats too last year, but it wasn't much of a game, right? It was just like a fun thing to do. And
I think tough. I thought there was a lot to that game, though. There's actually more than I think than this game.
Well, I don't know if it's a fair comparison, but if we were comparing these 3 to the 3 from last year, this is Flits and Meats to me.
Yeah.
This is
it fills that same frantic fun niche.
Right. It's a real time. You have to do something, but the thing you're doing is not skill based. It's just this activity thing that you're doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's why I thought it. Even though they got similar age ratings, it felt younger to me. Just because It's an activity.
Well, yeah,
It's
it
not
actually
fun.
has separate rules, right? For
Yeah.
for kids versus say adults, and I don't like the pattern recognition. I mean, the reason I think of you liking those games is because you always seem to. I remember in the old days you would always bring those out, and I'd be like, But
I love those.
But
ones,
for some reason, this one worked for me. Like it fell within my knowledge of being able to do that stuff. You know the games I'm talking about though, where like there are two things and you have to find the thing that is not represented by those two
I
unless
remember.
they're the same.
I don't even know why I got those anymore.
You have tons of those.
Well, a few. But I mean, I think you could even be like a 3-year-old kid and
Yeah.
do the basic version.
Agreed.
I mean,
Oh, sure,
this
totally.
goes real low.
Yeah.
We didn't say it, I think, when we did this episode, but the kids, there's a actual kids version of the game where you eliminate the timer.
Sure.
And you just
we said that, but what we didn't say was there's three.
can
You
play
go 3 or 4 ships.
A shorter game.
You can
three-
make the game shorter.
Right.
Yeah. So you
Oh,
just
yeah.
take 3 of the segments instead of the.
So
4.
if you didn't have a timer, I could see then you get the fun of what you were doing afterwards, which was like, oh, hey, look, these 3 swords kind of actually all
Right.
fall in quite nicely.
Yeah.
All right,
Let's move on to another one.
sure.
Nikki, what did you think about Push a Monster?
I liked it. I like the idea of the board holding more than you think it's going to hold, because it sure doesn't look like it can hold that
Yeah.
many monsters on it. The art is really good. The pieces I like that. When I saw it before, I thought the wooden pieces would be like thicker, more thicky pieces, and they're thinner here. And I liked that. I like the shapes and how they interplay off of each other on the board. Was very interesting to me. And I mean, there's a game there, like you guys were saying. This is almost like it's an activity. That these two are they're
More
games.
gamery, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed that one. I had fun. I like the way that it's not about, you have 10 of this monster, you have 5 of this monster, and that's how you end the game. I like how you're just comparing the length.
Yeah,
is
the
a
monster
neat,
parade is neat.
Yeah, it's a neat little twist to having points, which is
totally.
pretty much everything. So.
Lincoln, you got any thoughts on Push a Monster?
I really love it. I think it's a great game.
This is your favorite of the 3,
Yes,
right?
absolutely. I think it's just the whole group aspect of that one. There is Nikki mentioned in the actual game review playthrough that one you're like cheering on the people at the same time as you're hoping that you get pieces, right? Because you want to see. It's amazing when somebody can shove a piece on there and not knock it off, and it's packed. You're like, wow, I did not think there was more space on that board. It's really, really spectacular.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is also my favorite of the 3, even though we haven't gotten here yet. But this is clearly the most gamery game. I mean, this has got the most game to it.
Yes.
But I enjoyed this more, I think, just because I liked I think they found a cool way to me to take that dexterity game and actually make it something that was sort of fun and interesting to me. And it sounds like all the, let's call them adult dexterity games where you're stacking things or balancing things or whatever. My problem with most of those games is there's very little game to them.
Right.
It's all just that thing.
Right.
And somehow by making it for kids instead of for grown-ups, I'm okay with the game part of it still being not as strong as the activity, except they actually found, I think, kind of a cool game here.
Absolutely.
And the lineup is just fun, and the pieces are just fun. All those games are mostly based on how cool the pieces are anyway.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure. Don't forget, Villa Paletti is a previous Spiel des Jahres winner.
Yeah.
So
that
there's
was
definitely
kind of a kids game that won the big award.
that jumped up to the big award. But so there's definitely an appreciation for that tension of, is this move going to be okay? Am I going to be able to balance this perfectly? And that's my favorite part of this game. Whether I'm the one doing the monster pushing or somebody else is, that, a little bit of a nail biter, a little edge of your seat of like, is one going to fall or are 3? Is this going to be the deciding move or not? And that's really the fun of all those dexterity games to me.
Yeah, I liked it too. I mean, it definitely is. The theming is really good. I mean, the theming really fits for kids. I mean,
It really feels like you're pushing monsters. It so captures that very well.
No, I know what you're saying.
but the pieces look funny.
Yeah.
The parade, like I said, it looks like it's staring back at you while it's not your turn. And it's a good way of making a dexterity game for kids, which is probably not an easy trick. I mean, little kids are not, they're even clumsier than I was in this game, right? And so I think it was pretty slick how they put this one together.
All right. So the last is Spinderella. Go ahead. Let's start with you.
Well, obviously, this is a beautifully produced game, and it's got great Doris Mathis art, which she's spectacular. It's great to see her doing stuff. And the production is really nice. The idea, the whole mechanism of the spiders movement, and then we had been playing, another thing we'd been playing wrong before this, was that we didn't get the reward for capturing an ant.
We being not us.
Yes.
Your earlier play
at
without
BGG
us.
Fam, yeah, we played it perfectly fine here. Well, as far as we know.
As far as we
Fingers crossed, yeah.
But it's a fun game. It doesn't have the engaging aspect I feel that this one has. This one is drier, right?
For sure.
And I feel that one is definitely, the whole table's involved in that game.
Right.
More than
Yes.
any other game here.
Yep.
But it is very, very well produced, and it is a lot of fun.
Nikki P?
About that comment, the whole table being involved, I think when you roll a spider, it definitely the whole
the team gets
table is
involved.
getting worried about who's going to take what.
right.
So there is that, and I think there is that interaction in that, and I am sitting there worrying about if they rolled a spider, if they rolled a leaf, how that's going to play out, and am I the one who's going to get eaten or covered up or whatever. So I think that there is that interaction in there. I love the craning, dropping of the spider.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
that
great.
mechanism is just
It's really
just
cool.
fun. It's just fun. It's fun to figure out. You think, oh, it's, you do this and you do this and it lowers, but when you're aiming for something,
Yeah.
it doesn't quite work the way you think
Yeah.
it's going to
Well,
work.
a lot of the spots on the path, for example, don't line up to those
Perfectly,
dots.
too.
Yeah.
That's part of
Yeah.
it, right? Oh, sorry. What did you think?
I think this is by far the most game of the three, where there's the most tactical strategy and targeting the leader, or and like Nikki sort of said, like groupthink of oh, you can move the spider over here when it's your turn to do that. But it also, obviously, these are all three kids games, and there's a very generous helping of randomness in them. But Spinderella is almost the one where that can hurt you the most. You can just end up being in position for the spider to swoop down on two of your ants in a row, or your only ant out there gets covered up by the tree trunk and there's nothing you can do about it. So there definitely is the possibility of the somewhat capriciousness of it just kind of targeting one player randomly. But again, I enjoyed the game. I think that the spider, I honestly think it may win just because of the genius of the
Absolutely.
spider
Yeah.
magnet lowering and
Absolutely.
moving. That's a brilliant mechanism.
I really liked it. I think this is my favorite of the three, just because it's different than I thought last year. I mean, last year I think I skewed towards the littler kid ones.
The Ritterschlag one or the
Maybe,
Fritz and Meats?
yeah, the Ritterschlag or whatever
Yeah.
that was. And this is
That was the tile laying one.
yeah, it was like for real little kids.
Yeah.
And like we've been saying, this one is not that for sure. This one has more game. I think you can really just play this with gamers, and that's not the criteria for picking this award. It's not what I'm trying to think of too. But I think, I think I probably said this last year too. If I'm coming home from work and playing a game with my kid, it's kind of, I want to have something that's easy enough that they like. I would rather it not be so simple that I'm just completely bored after 30 seconds, And I think this kind of hits that middle spot really well.
More of a family game than a kid's game. is what
Yeah,
you're saying.
right. So, I'm not exactly sure maybe what the target is, but for me, I could see this. And it's got that big deluxe treatment, right? So
Absolutely.
it looks fantastic. It's not just a toy. That's the thing. When I first saw it, came here and saw it set up, I thought, wow, obviously the toy factor is really cool with the spiders and things, but I wonder how it plays. Actually, there's some real
There's game
gameplay
there.
in there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's something. It's the first time you get the little Kinder egg with the toy inside and that little capsule, but then the toy somehow is like 3 times the size of the
Yeah.
It's the same thing. There's something cool about when you open a box and like the game box is part of it, and you build up on the base of that box.
Right,
And there's I'm a sucker for that every time.
Yeah.
Even if the game is no good, it's like that part is really cool.
Absolutely.
That kind of erector set building stuff. I can see. I never even thought about that, but the notion of coming home and playing a game with your kids and these two games would not allow you to play while also potentially not being 100% involved. Like, I mean, this does, but to a certain extent, there's that tension. Whereas there's no tension here. You're just playing the game. Does that make sense?
A little bit. I think of it, sometimes that hypothetical I set up is, can you imagine coming home and being asked to play that game every night, right?
Right.
And some kids' games can't put up with that, and some kids' games can. And, I think, actually, I really think all of the selection are pretty good. I've been sort of splitting hairs on different things here.
Definitely.
But I could really give these as gifts.
Prognostication time. What do you think? What do you think might win?
What are we going to do? Our pointing thing?
Okay, so first, point to the game you think that the jury will pick.
Okay.
All right?
This is 1, 2, 3 shoot or something like that?
Sure. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 point. You ready?
Yep.
1, 2, 3 point.
I knew I was going to be.
All right, so you're picking Push a Monster, and the rest of us are picking this.
Yeah.
All right, so it's 4-1 in this. Now, point to the game that you would like to have the jury pick. The one you want.
Yeah,
to
The one you pick. You're on the jury. You are the jury.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Or is it
You are the. There you go. That's it. That's a better way.
You
to put
are
it.
the
Ready?
jury.
1, 2, 3 point.
Ooh.
Oh, I'm all
Now
by
we got-
myself.
So it's 4-1 by yourself.
And Lincoln is the only one who didn't swap votes on that.
Well,
He
Lincoln
picked
loves
both.
it.
for
Lincoln
the-
loves
Well, I
it,
picked this
and he
both
thinks
ways.
it's got a
Okay,
chance,
yeah.
which is kind of cool.
I think they all of them have a chance.
Sure.
I
Sure.
honestly
Yes.
feel each one has something going for them, depending on what the jurors are thinking. Right? Again,
Yes.
a lot of those people, I don't know the jurors. I've met one Kinderspiel this Jahres juror,
Okay.
and he was a big adult, and he was very nice. But he had children. He used to write. He is a journalist, and he had one. He wrote 4 articles a month, or one every week, and he'd always feature one kids game. So that was
neat.
why he was even targeted to. They asked him if he'd be interested in being a juror, and so I wonder if that shifts, right, when you no longer have a kid in the house, because you're thinking like a kid in the house, and I've never had a kid in the house, so I very rarely played children's games with children, except basically at your place and maybe Jonathan.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, if it weren't for the jury award thing that we now do because of game night, I would even play some of it. I mean, I would probably never see these games.
And it's sad because ultimately there's
They're
some
good.
spectacular children's games out there. One of my all-time favorites is Hamster Roll, which is just genius.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a scary. You're like, sliding those pieces on.
Yeah.
So there are spectacular children's
It's
games.
funny.
out there.
I don't think of that as
I didn't even
children's
realize
I wouldn't
that was.
actually either. No.
I think
I
that
mean,
is-
it is. I would think it is. We've always. That is
Yeah.
one time I played it with Sean's kids, and that was just amazing.
I mean, it's definitely a game kids can play,
Right.
but I don't
Yeah,
know.
I mean,
I don't think of that
Zoke-
as. But
Zoke
it is Zoke. I mean, it
Zoke
could
is
be.
leans more towards children's games, but they're also family games. They've won quite a few times for Spiel des Jahres, the Niagara, and a bunch of different games.
Well, I think of the award as
And
2 ways that are really kind of the same way, which is if I had a young kid at home, which I don't anymore, but I used to, what would I get? And the other is, and I think this probably matters to a lot of people, is if I'm buying a gift, right?
Yeah.
I'm someone's grandma, I'm someone's uncle, or whatever, and I've got little nieces, nephews, grandkids, and I want to buy something. And I would think that's a real big part of what the award's for. And
Absolutely.
I think all these work really
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, they're
I
all-
don't think there's a
well. You can see why a jury picked this collection.
Yeah, they're all
Right.
they're all gorgeous right out of the box. That's part of it, right? Like whether you like the way this plays or not, if you gave this to someone as a gift, the minute they saw all those wooden treasure pieces,
Oh, yeah.
it'd be like, oh, and
They'll
the
easily give
chest
these
and
as
the whole
gifts.
thing.
Yeah, they're all super well produced, and they're just fun. I mean, they are fun. I feel this one has just something for me that it's fun to play in a group where people are yelling when they. Maria Wauer played it with me and Jeff, and she was struggling to get the piece on there, and she knocked one off and then yelled, and her yell knocked off another piece. It was so funny, and everybody looked, right, because it was in the middle of that hall, but it was great.
That's the thing that dexterity games do really well, which is they suck
Other people.
onlookers,
Audience.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's also
It's
fun.
just I love because it has elements. Think about the other Queen game, Via Appia, where you're pushing the little
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
discs on.
I like
It
that
has that kind of thing going on, but I like what's going on with this much more. I really like the irregular arena because you cannot.
important.
Once pieces are on there, you can't tell, especially when things are moving. It's moving around. You do not know where the voids are, and I love it. I love being able, like, should I push that direction, or should I be pushing from that direction? To go back the other way. And it's just clever. I mean, it is really, really clever. They're all great.
Every year, I mean, this is what's cool, right? Is that last year? I mean,
how did we do last year?
we
all.
To me, none of these to me is as good as Geister from last year.
Geister has a little bit of a difference there, where it can be played as more of a family game. And I think that was a knock against that jury pick, because people felt it was a family game and not a kid's game.
Well, it was a co-op for one, right? Which was...
I just feel they're wrong. Because I think kids can play that game, absolutely, and have a good time, without the advanced level stuff that goes on there.
It wasn't a knock. I mean, that
was a knock.
That won, though.
People didn't feel that it should have won. They felt it should have been a family game.
Interesting.
A few people
totally
that I talked
to.
People. This is me talking to a couple people. So.
People?
Yeah.
Top men.
Yeah.
Top men working on it.
Top men.
All right, well, unless anyone has anything else to say, final thoughts? Yes? No?
Cool.
Children's games!
Spiel away.
Woo.
Spiel away.